you know? And it's up to us to control our own hate. Okay? We are all very comfortable with our hate. And that's what prejudice is. Prejudice is hate. Okay? And the hate in Oklahoma City in 2014 boiled over. Okay? So, what do you think about that, Mitch?
Well, I like what you said. I wanted to follow up after we listened to what Daniel said there. I talked about scary. What brought to my mind was we all live on Avery Road.
Mm-hmm.
This could happen to any one of us at
Anybody.
any time for whatever motivation.
Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
As a lawyer, as an attorney, Travis, let me ask you this. In this case, a list was created by one of the detectives of women that Daniel had contact with in the course of his job. And this list was created. It targeted African American women with histories of prostitution and drug activity, and they went and sought out these women. Now, at trial, the defense obviously found out about this list because they went back and listened to the the interviews, and you clearly hear in numerous interviews them referring to this list. The prosecution denied that it ever existed at trial. What would you do at that point as a defense attorney? What would you start doing when that started happening?
And that came out during trial?
Yes. They were pointing out that there was a list, and the prosecution denied it. That they denied that there was ever a list, but you can clearly hear it being referred to in multiple interviews.
Well, you'd move for a mistrial, and then you'd say that it was based on intentional misconduct, and therefore they couldn't retry the case. But that's clearly prosecutorial misconduct. The defense attorneys, we haven't gotten the transcripts yet, so I'm looking forward to getting those, to be able to read through the stuff. But so I'm kind of hearing everything second and third hand. But I could say in general, if I was aware that the investigating agency was doing something as part of their investigation, and I wanted that, and I requested that from the state, and they told me, nope, sorry, it doesn't exist. And then that came out during trial. I'd document everything. I'd pull out letters. I'd say, Your Honor, I need a hearing outside the presence of the jury. Here's why I requested once, twice, a third time this list that I kept hearing about. And here's the 3 responses from the state saying it doesn't exist. Right. I want a hearing on this. I'd put the prosecutor on the stand. What's up with this? And then I'd ask for a mistrial, and then I'd ask that the court hold that it was in bad faith and jeopardy applies, and they can't retry the case.
So we'll have to look in the transcripts when we eventually get them and see if anything like that took place.
Absolutely. And a lot of things, like, for example, that first stop, how much of that came out during the trial? Did the defense effectively cross-examine on the fact that there was no handprint fingerprints on top of the car.
Right.
What was discussed about the no DNA being there, and then when we get to your last topic about the DNA, there's a lot of improprieties, not just apparently about a list, but about what certain DNA evidence meant or didn't mean.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, if you go out, you put an ad in the paper, anybody else with similar complaints, similar problems. The problem is, if it happens to somebody we know or love, or a certain group of people we admire, like female gymnasts,
right,
then it's okay. But if it's trying to find other black female, drug users and or prostitutes, that's a witch hunt.
right.
The thing is, it needs to be the same regardless of who the victim is. An Olympic athlete,
Right.
an alleged victim of a Palm Beach billionaire.
Right.
And I could, get back to your original question, I could see where, you have a case, the person's credible, but, it's just not there, and it's the type of pattern in conduct that this wouldn't be the first and only time. I mean, it could be exculpatory also. You'd think that, well, there's got to be other victims. So we contacted other people that fit this profile that would be potential victims, and you would hope that if they said, no, nothing like that happened to me at all, that would be taken as casting doubt on the story of the first alleged victim.
One of the ladies did that 7 times before.
Right.
Rocky got
And
her
then,
flip-flop.
they keep going back, and then then you're into a McMartin preschool case. And no, we know something happened at that preschool. And all of your other classmates, I mean, we know, even with 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds, you cannot lead them, but with adults, and you're going back and you're going back, and that especially people that are engaged in criminal activity, either as drug users or prostitutes, they're vulnerable. And so if you keep going back enough times, you're going to get them to say what you want to say. You can just infer it with pressure. And, so that technique about advertising, in essence, for other victims, that has been done in the past and effectively, and it's helped to track down people involved in serial criminal activity. But obviously you have to be extremely careful, because there's cases like
Henry Lee Lucas, for one. Anyway.
Well, the yogurt shop murders they had in Austin, Dr. Leo is involved with. They had people show up out of nowhere confessing to that. And because they're putting out ads for information, and you had people that there's no way they could have committed the crime, came in, they're just crazy people, believe it or not, came in and confessed to a capital murder. And in Texas, capital murder is capital murder. I mean, they end up, reaching the final outcome. But you know, why on earth would somebody do that? But
Right.
they do, and you know, we keep coming back to the same thing over and over and over again in these cases, is that if you're not vigilant to, if you don't maintain your objectivity, if you get tunnel vision,
Right.
this is what can happen. And so the technique, yeah, you know, I've seen that used before, but you've got to be hyper vigilant,
Right.
because people in that situation will come forward because they think there may be some sort of benefit that they can get intangible by helping the police.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's just common sense. But I don't agree that take that particular group of women from that circumstance and then it's automatic, you know, you don't believe them or they're not
Right.
worthy of belief, or
I agree.
I think that's a big problem
I
area.
agree.
But
yes, I think it's important to analyze each one of their interviews separately and raise whatever claims you might have with certain parts of each interview. But I agree with you on that. It's dangerous to lop everybody together.
Yeah, which dovetails into, you know, should these cases have all been tried together or separately? And that,
right.
you know, that's one of the big legal claims, is that you've gone out, you've solicited people to make complaints, or you've gone out and talked to everybody that a person's come into contact with, whether they're, you know, a police officer or a dog catcher or a billionaire in Florida or a, you know, doctor to gymnast. You've got to evaluate their stories together, but at what point is it okay to go ahead and indict on a flimsy case,
Right.
with a, you know, a much stronger case, but bring that flimsy case with the strong case? Clearly, all you're doing is trying to add credibility to the flimsy case, right?
Right. Exactly.
But
And
that's one of the
and if they
legal.
have merit, they should stand on their own, right?
Well, yeah, they should, but you know, obviously, there, you know, there's things like judicial economy, and so let's take one of, you know, Ted Bundy's, the incident at the sorority house, and you have multiple victims.
Right.
Why are we going to put those families through 5 separate trials, let's say?
Right.
So there's arguments on both sides, but this is one of the legal issues that Daniel's defense team has been trying to get out there that I don't think really got evaluated or addressed by the courts. It wasn't given the attention that it deserved, because clearly there's a point where joining cases starts to impede on a person's constitutional rights.
Right.
You know, and there's probably, you know, at the other extreme, where if you had 2 separate victims, solid case with forensics, be perfectly appropriate to bring those 2 cases together. But you know, the circumstances of this case, where there's no scientific evidence, no corroboration, and you're just going out trying to pile on.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the word I like, or the exact phrase I like to use, because that's exactly what it's like.
Well, I was just going to add that whether or not there was a list, we hear Rocky Gregory talking about a list, don't we? But
Right.
maybe that was a list that he'd had in his head, But clearly, it
No,
seems
he
as
refers
if,
to a list that was created by Detective Musney. I mean, he lays it all out when he's talking to ladies. Actually, you know what my favorite part is, Travis, and I can't wait till you see or get to one of the interviews where this happens. But it's when Rocky Gregory, the girls will ask, "Well, how did you get my name?" They'll be like, "How did you get to somehow being interested in me?" Because they don't understand. And he starts to talk about the list. Yeah. And I gotta tell you, it is freaking hilarious to watch Rocky dance around telling these ladies what the list is. Because he doesn't want to just come out and say, "Oh, well, we made up this list of African-American women with a history of prostitution and drug habits, and so here we are." You know what I mean?
But that's the point, isn't it? Whether or not the list was done for honourable reasons or otherwise, for genuine investigative reasons or not, the fact is that once these women are contacted, a lot of them have that immediate response of, "Why are you getting in touch with me?"
Right.
And they have to be spoon-fed the information that we're trying to prosecute one of our own officers, and they're very dubious at first. A lot of them, aren't they? Mm-hmm. In fact, they flat out deny that anything happened.
Some of them, a few of them do. Yes.
Yeah.
With Terry Morris, she complained. With Terry Morris, it was a completely different guy in a completely different area of town on a completely different day from the story she ended up telling. That Rocky Gregory ended up kind of getting her to tell later. After she was in, she ended up getting locked up. She had been in county jail for a week and had no hope of getting out, and suddenly she decided to call Mr. Rocky Gregory to come over and give her a visit and see her. So, and suddenly the story starts to change. So, everybody make of that what you will. I leave it to your own judgment.
Let me ask you a question. You two know the facts much better. So, I've only seen snippets of I believe it's the initial interview of Daniel. It sounds like it. There's a female detective and a male detective, and a short-haired female detective.
Yes, that's Kim Davis. Yep.
That interview, I've seen that type of interview with officers I've represented, and pretty standard. But at some point, Detective Davis starts saying at the end, "Okay, well, what am I going to see on this video? Am I going to see her breast exposed in the video?" And he said, "I never saw her expose her breast."